Hidden symbols in plain sight. Secret chambers beneath ancient lodges. Forbidden Hebrew manuscripts pass through shadowy initiations. The mysterious connection between Jewish mysticism and Freemasonry has ignited centuries of conspiracy theories, influenced world leaders, and spawned secret societies within secret societies. From Solomon's Temple to Washington's monuments, a cryptic language of symbols reveals an astonishing truth. Two seemingly separate traditions share one esoteric bloodline. Today, we decode the mystical language that links medieval Jewish mystics to the fraternal order that shaped Western civilization, unveiling the cosmic blueprint that both traditions have guarded for centuries. If you like historical mysteries, please subscribe to the channel. Kabbalah represents one of the most profound mystical traditions within Judaism, offering an esoteric interpretation of the Hebrew Bible and a mystical understanding of the universe. The word Kabbalah derives from the Hebrew root kol, QBL, meaning to receive or to accept, signifying that this wisdom is received through direct transmission from teacher to student. At its core, Kabbalah seeks to explain the relationship between the unchanging, eternal, and mysterious Ein Sof, the infinite, and the mortal, finite universe. Through complex symbolic systems like the Sephirah, the 10 emanations of God, and the 4 worlds, Kabbalists explore the nature of divinity and humanity's place in the cosmic order. As S. L. McGregor Mathers writes in the Kabbalah Unveiled, the Kabbalah may be defined as being the esoteric Jewish doctrine. It is called in Hebrew QBLH, Kabbalah, which is derived from the root QBL, Kaibal, meaning to receive. This appellation refers to the custom of handing down the esoteric tradition by oral transmission, and is nearly allied to tradition. Freemasonry, by contrast, emerged as a fraternal organization in late medieval Europe, evolving from guilds of stonemasons into a philosophical society dedicated to moral improvement, brotherhood, and charitable works. While operative masonry concerned itself with the practical aspects of building, speculative masonry, which began to dominate in the 17th and 18th centuries, focused on using the symbols and tools of the mason's craft as metaphors for ethical and spiritual development. Freemasonry is characterized by elaborate rituals, symbolic teachings, and a hierarchical system of degrees. Its philosophical foundation draws from numerous sources, including ancient mysteries, Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and Enlightenment ideals. Manly P. Hall, in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, describes Freemasonry as an ancient and honorable fraternity, a system of moral living which promotes the brotherhood of man under the fatherhood of God. He further notes that Freemasonry is a philosophy which is essentially creedless. It is the universal morality, which is applicable to all men regardless of race, religion, or an individual creed. The historical origins of Kabbalah. While mystical traditions existed in Judaism from ancient times, what we recognize as Kabbalah began to take definitive form in medieval Europe. The Sefer Yetzirah, Book of Formation, one of the earliest Kabbalistic texts, likely dates from between the 2nd and 6th centuries CE, but Kabbalah's most influential development occurred in 12th and 13th century Spain and southern France. The publication of the Zohar, Book of Splendor, attributed to Rabbi Moses de Leon, but claimed to contain the teachings of the 2nd century sage Rabbi Shimon bar Yochai, marked a watershed moment. This extensive mystical commentary on the Torah became Kabbalah's central text, elaborating complex cosmological and theosophical systems. Professor Gershom Scholem, the preeminent academic authority on Kabbalah, explains, the Zohar represents a turning point in the history of Jewish mysticism. It synthesized earlier traditions, introduced new symbolic systems, and established a mystical theosophy that would dominate Jewish esotericism for centuries. After the expulsion of Jews from Spain in 1492, Kabbalah found a new center in safe Israel, where figures like Rabbi Isaac Luria developed profound new interpretations focused on cosmic repair, tikkun olam, and the divine contraction, tzimtzum, that allowed creation to occur. Freemasonry's transition from operative to speculative began gradually in the late 16th century, when lodges began admitting non-Masons as accepted or speculative members. This transformation accelerated in the 17th century and culminated in 1717 with the formation of the Grand Lodge of England, marking the official birth of modern speculative Freemasonry. During the 18th century, especially in France and Germany, Masonry expanded beyond its initial 3 degrees, entered apprentice, fellow craft, and master Mason, to include elaborate, high-degree systems that incorporated elements from various esoteric traditions, including Kabbalah, Hermeticism, alchemy, and Rosicrucianism. Masonic historian Robert Freemasonry notes, "The period between 1740 and 1800 saw an explosion of Masonic systems and rites, many claiming ancient origins and incorporating increasingly esoteric elements. This was the era when Masonry absorbed numerous mystical currents, including significant Kabbalistic influences. The first significant documented integration of Kabbalistic elements into Masonic thought appears in the mid-18th century, particularly in the works of Martins de Paspoli and his Alice Cohen's order, Louis-Claude de Saint Martin, and the rite of strict observance developed by Baron von Hund. One crucial bridge between these traditions was the increasing Christian interest in Kabbalah that began during the Renaissance. Christian Kabbalists like Giovanni Pico della Mirandola, Johannes Reuchlin, and Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa reinterpreted Kabbalistic concepts to harmonize them with Christian theology and Hermetic philosophy, creating what scholars term Christian Kabbalah or Hermetic Kabbalah. In 3 books of occult philosophy, Agrippa asserts, "The Kabbalah of the Jews is a sublime, secret, divine knowledge, teaching concerning the highest contemplation of the Godhead and of the most holy and mysterious divine names." This Christianized version of Kabbalah, already removed from its Jewish origins, became the primary source for Masonic adaptations. Albert Pike in Morals and Dogma explicitly acknowledges this debt. All truly dogmatic religions have issued from the Kabbalah and returned to it. Everything scientific and grand in the religious dreams of all the Illuminati, Jacob Boehme, Swedenborg, St. Martin, and others, is borrowed from the Kabbalah. All the Masonic associations owe to it their secrets and their symbols. Concrete documentation of this influence appears in high-degree Masonic rituals developed in the 18th century, particularly in the Scottish Rite's 28th degree, Night of the Sun, and in various Rosicrucian degrees that explicitly incorporated the Sephirotic tree and Hebrew divine names. The Tree of Life in Masonic symbolism. The most recognizable Kabbalistic symbol, the Tree of Life with its 10 Sephirot, appears explicitly in certain Masonic high degrees. The pattern of the Sephirot has been compared to the arrangement of officers in a Masonic lodge, and the 3 pillars of the Sephirotic tree, severity, mercy, and balance, find parallels in the 3 pillars of wisdom, strength, and beauty that are central to Masonic symbolism. Manly P. Hall notes this connection. The Sephirotic tree, with its multiple emanations of divinity, became integrated into Masonic symbolism as representing the hierarchical order of creation and initiation. The concept of ascent through degrees corresponds naturally to the Kabbalistic ascent through spiritual worlds. Please subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Help us create this beautiful community. Hebrew letters and divine names. Hebrew letters and divine names feature prominently in Masonic ritual, particularly in higher degrees. The Tetragrammaton appears in numerous Masonic contexts, and the lost word sought in the Master Mason degree has been interpreted by some Masonic scholars as relating to the Kabbalistic understanding of divine names. In Morals and Dogma, Pike writes, "This is the true word of a Master Mason, the word that the ancient Hebrews used to express the name of the deity, and it means wisdom, strength, and beauty, explicitly connecting Masonic concepts to Kabbalistic divine names." Both traditions feature a concept of spiritual ascent through stages or degrees. The Kabbalistic 4 worlds, Atziluth, Beriah, Yetzirah, and Asaya, and the soul's journey through them find parallels in the Masonic degree system and its emphasis on progressive enlightenment. As the Zohar states, "A man should always picture himself as if the Holy One, blessed be He, dwells within him." This concept of the divine spark within corresponds to the Masonic emphasis on self-improvement and the rough ashlar becoming the perfect ashlar through spiritual labor. Both traditions place immense importance on numerical symbolism. The Kabbalistic system of gematria, which assigns numerical values to Hebrew letters, finds echoes in Masonic numerical symbolism, particularly in the significance of numbers 3, 5, 7, and 9 in various Masonic degrees. Thessel McGregor Mathers explains in the Kabbalah Unveiled, "The first 10 numbers and the 22 letters are the foundations of all things. The 22 letters are the formative elements, while the 10 numbers are analogous to the 10 Sephiroth." Eliphas Levi stands as perhaps the most influential figure in connecting Kabbalistic and Masonic symbolism. Though his understanding of Kabbalah was heavily influenced by Christian and Hermetic interpretations rather than authentic Jewish tradition, his works Dogme et Rituel de la Haute Magie and Histoire de la Magie powerfully shaped subsequent esoteric thought. Levi explicitly drew parallels between the Kabbalah's Tree of Life, tarot trumps, and Masonic symbolism, creating a synthetic system that influenced numerous Masonic writers. His famous drawing of Baphomet incorporated Kabbalistic elements like the Hebrew words for Leviathan inscribed on the figure's arms. Pike references Levi extensively in Morals and Dogma, indicating the Frenchman's influence on Scottish Rite Masonry. Albert Pike, the influential reformer of the Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, extensively incorporated Kabbalistic elements into his revisions of Masonic ritual. His monumental Morals and Dogma contains numerous references to Kabbalah, though filtered through Christian and Hermetic interpretations. Pike writes, "The true name of Satan, the Kabbalists say, is that of Yahweh reversed. For Satan is not a black god, but the negation of God. The Kabbalah alone consecrates the alliance of the universal reason and divine word." This reflects his integration of Kabbalistic concepts into Masonic philosophical teachings. In England, Kenneth R. H. Mackenzie and William Wynne Westcott, both Masonic scholars and founders of the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, further developed the connections between Kabbalah and Masonry in their writings and ritual systems. The Golden Dawn system, though not strictly Masonic, heavily influenced subsequent Masonic esoteric thought. Westcott noted, "There is no difficulty in showing that Freemasonry has borrowed largely from the store of Kabbalistic learning. The actual Hebrew Kabbalists for many centuries largely came from France, Germany, and Spain. And it seems likely that during the building of the great continental cathedrals, the foreign Jewish savants, who alone possessed mathematical and architectural skill, were brought into contact with the operative Masons. As Kabbalistic concepts entered Masonic thought, they underwent significant transformations. Jewish Kabbalah, deeply rooted in Torah and Talmud, became increasingly detached from its original religious context and universalized to fit Masonic principles of religious inclusivity. The Kabbalistic concept of Ein Sof was often equated with the Masonic concept of the great architect of the universe. The Sephirot were reinterpreted as universal forces, rather than specifically Jewish divine emanations. Hebrew divine names were incorporated into ritual without their original theological context. Academic scholars of esotericism, like Antoine Favre and Wouter Hanegraaff, have termed this process Christianized Kabbalah, or occult Kabbalah, noting its significant departures from Jewish mystical traditions. Professor Moshe Idel, a leading academic scholar of Kabbalah, observes, "What entered Western esoteric traditions, including Freemasonry, was not Kabbalah as practiced in Jewish communities, but a heavily adapted version that suited Christian theological and philosophical frameworks." This transformation is evident in Pike's interpretations. In Morals and Dogma, he writes, "The Kabbalah is the key of the occult sciences, and the Gnostics were born of the Kabbalists." This statement reflects the Western esoteric synthesis rather than authentic Jewish Kabbalistic understanding. Jewish academic perspectives. Modern Jewish scholars of Kabbalah generally emphasize the significant differences between authentic Jewish mystical traditions and their Western esoteric adaptations in traditions like Freemasonry. Professor Gershom Scholem, in Major Trends in Jewish Mysticism, argues that what entered Western esoteric traditions was not Kabbalah proper, but a peculiar Christian interpretation of it. Jewish Kabbalah was transformed almost beyond recognition when adapted by Christian mystics. Joseph Dan, another prominent scholar, notes, "The use of Jewish mystical symbols in non-Jewish contexts, while historically significant, represents a fundamental transformation of their meaning and purpose." Masonic academic perspectives. Modern Masonic scholars generally acknowledge the influence of Kabbalistic elements while recognizing their transformation within Masonic contexts. Art de Hoyos, Grand Archivist of the Scottish Rite Southern jurisdiction, writes, "Pike's use of Kabbalistic materials was selective and interpretive, adapting them to fit within the broader philosophical framework of the Scottish Rite." Robert G. Davis, in The Mason's Words, suggests, "While Kabbalistic elements are undeniably present in certain Masonic degrees, particularly in the Scottish Rite, they represent one influence among many, including Hermeticism, Neoplatonism, and Christian symbolism." Academic scholars of Western esotericism like Antoine Favre, Wouter Hanegraaff, and Jocelyn Godwin have developed more nuanced understandings of the complex relationship between Jewish Kabbalah and its adaptations in Western esoteric traditions, including Freemasonry. Anna Graf writes, "What we find in Western esoteric traditions is not Kabbalah, but Kabbalah, a reimagining of Jewish mystical concepts through non-Jewish cultural lenses. This process created something new rather than simply appropriating Jewish tradition." Despite their different origins and contexts, Kabbalah and Freemasonry do share certain philosophical orientations. Symbolic thinking. Both traditions employ elaborate symbol systems to convey philosophical and spiritual concepts, recognizing the limits of direct language and expressing transcendent ideas. Ethical perfectionism. Both emphasize the ethical improvement of the individual through spiritual discipline and practice. Initiatory structure. Both feature graduated systems of teaching and initiation, revealing deeper knowledge as the practitioner demonstrates readiness. Cosmological interest. Both are concerned with understanding the structure of creation and humanity's place within it. Divine names. Both place importance on divine names as keys to understanding spiritual realities, though their theological interpretations differ significantly. The Zohar states, "The Torah has a body, which is composed of the commandments of the Torah, and a soul, which is the more recondite aspect." Similarly, Masonic ritual presents its teachings through allegory and symbols that conceal deeper meanings from the uninitiated. The relationship between Kabbalah and Freemasonry represents a complex case of cross-cultural adaptation and transformation. While documented connections certainly exist, particularly in 18th and 19th century Western esoteric Masonry, these connections involve significant reinterpretation of Kabbalistic concepts rather than direct transmission of Jewish mystical traditions. What entered Masonic thought was not authentic Jewish Kabbalah, but its already transformed Christian and Hermetic adaptations, beginning with Renaissance Christian Kabbalists and continuing through figures like Eliphas Levi and Albert Pike. The Tree of Life, Hebrew divine names, and certain numerical symbolism did find their way into some Masonic degrees, particularly in the Scottish Rite and other high-degree systems. However, these elements were integrated into a syncretic philosophical framework that departed significantly from their original Jewish theological context. As Manly P. Hall observes in The Secret Teachings of All Ages, Freemasonry is a system of initiation that draws upon numerous cultural streams to create its symbolic method of teaching. Among these streams are certain elements derived from Kabbalah, though adapted to serve Masonry's universal moral and philosophical aims. The scholarly consensus recognizes both connections and transformations, avoiding both the extremes of claiming direct Kabbalistic origins for Masonry and denying any influence whatsoever. This balanced perspective acknowledges cultural exchange while respecting the integrity and distinctiveness of both traditions. Understanding these connections requires a nuanced view of cultural transmission, not simple appropriation, but a complex process of reinterpretation, synthesis, and transformation that created something new from multiple sources. Ultimately, the study of these connections offers valuable insights into how religious and philosophical ideas travel across cultural boundaries, undergoing transformation while retaining elements of their original form, a process that continues in our increasingly interconnected world.